Matthew! Matthew! Come on, come on, come on then.
Phil?
Come on.
I'm Roger Tonge, and I produced and directed the scene program Two of Us, which was pretty well the first time we directly looked at the topic of homosexuality. Leslie Stewart had got a wonderful script together. Like any producer, we'd worked it out together, but his dialogue has got lots of fun in it, which actually got up the nose of so many people afterwards. So it really aimed to be, for once, a drama that was just about two boys. The only difference between a love story was that there were two boys. I chose Seaford because I knew it, and it's the sort of place that, believably, two boys who are running away from the homophobia experienced in London would choose as a place, and it's delightfully underdeveloped. And in the summer holidays, it's not too crowded, so you can get away with filming wonderfully scenic places, and it also it gave us opportunities for some really romantic settings, because we really wanted this story to have a romantic feel about it, because up to then so much gay drama was sort of heavily laden with problems and things like that. I live myself in Seaford, so I kind of knew where things were and what I could use. Casting was not really a problem, because I'd got my contacts with the sort of agencies that have working class kids. A lot of my dramas have Anna Scher actors in it, and Jason Rush, Matthew, came from there, so did Phil, and so did many of the extras, and so did Kathy Burke, who actually had done for me 2 or 3 dramas before. I like using actors again and again, sort of a scene repertory company. So she was quite happy to do quite a small role, but it has quite an impact as Sharon's girlfriend and sort of support when Sharon is nearly falling apart. I used my own parents in 2 scenes as walk-on extras. Obviously they were free, but it was also a kind of way of involving them. They were very involved, and they sensed how important this particular film was to me. I hadn't ever come out in the sort of dramatic sense to them, but they sensed, like many parents do, they sensed that this was my sexuality. And as a result, they were very committed to the success of the film, and they were delighted. It was a wonderful collaboration there, which means, even to this day, means a lot to me. Once it'd been announced in the press, BBC Schools Television always announces to the education world what the programs for the next year are. And therefore, these are often, especially the scene program, are scrutinized, because there are always some things there that some journalists will find a little story about. And of course, when they see Two of Us, which was then called Mates, and the subject matter, that really began to raise the roof. And at that time, there was already a new directive on the teaching of sexuality in schools, and it really was a directive that in the end ended up as Section 28, that you mustn't do anything for schools which shows homosexuality in a sort of positive light, and something equal to normal relationships. And it's a really awful thing, and many of us were really harmed by Section 28. It harmed us because the temperature rose, and here we were preparing to film. We were hoping that the cast weren't upset by this background of rumbling, and we had to sort of protect them from that. And in a way, we had to tread very carefully. It looked like it's going to be forgotten forever. However, a lot of people wanted it out, especially from the educational world, and we had a new head of schools department, Alan Rogers, who really wanted this film out. And he said, well, couldn't there be any cuts? And he was sort of also in contact with the BBC high-ups and toing and froing. And the suggestion came down, well, maybe it could go out if we have dialogue cuts. And some dialogues were particularly offensive, it seems, to the moral right. One of them was where they meet Susie, and she says, bi, hetero, gay. It's all designer sex. What's the difference? Very important dialogue like that, which challenges stereotyping. The other bit they didn't like was when the two boys, in a moment of tension between them and things aren't going quite right, they see the ferry, and this plays an important part of the ferry from Seaford, from New Haven, going out to France. And they sort of wistfully look up and they see, that's where we should be, across the sea. Why? You could do it at 16. Really? We'd be decent and proper, of an age to consent. Only one problem. What's that? I'll get seasick. It's the one bit I know off by heart because it emphasizes the light touch. Leslie's wonderful writing. And it's the light touch that actually got us into problems. One or two people said, where's mention of AIDS? Where is the tragedy that AIDS is causing? Where is it? We didn't want that in it. Another scene that was singled out for its fun was the scene where they tell this kind of driver who's a nasty character who's giving them a lift. And where you off to, lads? Off to the seaside. Oh, you're off to the seaside, are you? And the boys say, yeah, it's our honeymoon. What? And the driver suddenly realises what they're on about. And Phil then leans forward and says, but don't worry, you're not our sort. I mean, lines like that suggest that it's quite sort of brimming with sex. And I don't know, they're talking about it doing it. In France, you can do it. But it's the way teenagers talk. But it's not what the moral right wanted to hear from a school's telly programme. We wanted to keep all that dialogue. We were not going to allow that dialogue to be cut. So in return, we said, how about changing the ending? How about having Phil really go away back home with his girlfriend? How about Matthew really staying alone? With the changed ending, it's a sort of normal ending. The BBC was prepared to show it, but not in daytime. It was programmed a whole year later to be shown at midnight, 11:30, in March 1988. So it was billed as that, and that was the reason for showing it, an opportunity for schools to tape it and discuss it. Well, of course, the press got hold of this, and the first ever teenage program going out at 11:30 at night. And the Sun, for instance, said, send this video back to where it belongs. Wonderfully, it got an audience of between 1.5 and 2 million, which, apart from sport, was one of the highest audiences ever at that time of night. The response was terrific because the broadcasting services at that time, they had a 3-hour helpline going into the night, and they sent the sort of details of how youngsters and parents were phoning their mum. But we, during the next week, also got our own letters. I mean, here's a letter that even now makes me cry. Thank you so much for 2 of us. I am 19 years old, and I've tried to commit suicide 3 times. After seeing the program, I don't think I'll be trying again.